I've traveled across space and time, seen and done things beyond imagination. My last adventure is about to begin.
It's definitely up there with the greatest Superman stories of all time.
You and Superman could have been friends, and instead you're going to die.
Ah, but he'll die first.
Whenever we're doing an adaptation from the original comic book source to a movie-length animated project, the fear is always time and limitations.
Always a challenge whenever we do an adaptation of a famous comic, especially if it's one that has a really distinctive art style, like Frank Quietly's work.
I had been familiar with Frank Quietly and Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman when it came out as a comic book because I am a fan. And it was interesting because of the episodic nature of it.
There was 12 very different issues in it, and a lot of it seemed more like chapters than it did sort of like one cohesive through line. I think it works better in series than it does basically in a feature length.
We knew that we weren't going to be able to squeeze all 12 issues into one 70-some-odd minute movie. So we had to make some tough choices early on. You know, when we first were given the assignment, it was kind of like, oh, boy, what do we leave out? You know, because there's so much good stuff.
I love you, Lois Lane, until the end of time.
Dwayne McDuffie and Alan Burnett and I went through the comics, you know, just flipped through them and said, oh, we have to do this part. And it's like, oh, we love the Bizarro story, but does it really further the story, and does it not? It was tricky, you know, trying to figure out which stories needed to be there and which ones we could somehow fold into the story.
Lois, stay out of there. It's off limits.
And the credit goes to Dwayne McDuffie, obviously, for finding basically that through line. Our job, at least from the storyboarding, visual kind of sense of it, how do you make it like a smooth ride, right?
You've broken the moon.
I've said it before, and I'll gladly say it again. Dwayne is my favorite writer that I've ever worked with in animation. He just got it. He was just a brilliant writer.
Unfortunately, Dwayne passed during the release of All-Star Superman. It was a real shock.
I think the way Dwayne McDuffie laid it out, it was really smooth.
Your cells are oversaturated with power.
I'm dying.
Telling one narrative, that was the challenge. Because Grant Morrison was very generous and gracious, even, I think, applauded some of the decisions that Dwayne made in crafting the story.
The one place where he went off book, he came up with this really neat twist. Luthor basically, now that he's seen the light about how wrong he's been, he figures out the code for Superman's DNA and can actually recreate him.
I reverse engineered it from his 24-hour super serum. I also finally figured out how to replicate it.
He got the ultimate compliment from Grant was when Grant saw the movie, he said, damn, I wish I had thought of that. It's like, that's a great twist. I think we ultimately came up with something I think is pretty satisfying as a self-contained Superman movie, but it was definitely a challenge.
Come on, let's say Metropolis.
Frank Quietly's style is very organic.
There's a handful of artists that come to the medium with a style that's as different and unique as his.
We were all huge fans of his work in general, but specifically of the comic. So we knew we definitely wanted to try to honor his style, his unique approach to Superman and Superman's world. But boy, it was freaking hard.
What are you talking about?
There's so many challenges. How do you break down somebody's really super distinctive, idiosyncratic style into something that can be animated and animated consistently by a team of artists who are working half a world away?
Whenever you're designing a new universe, it's always difficult. As a medium, animation's about simplifying. It's not just one illustration. It's thousands of individual frames at 24 per second. That's a lot of drawings.
At the same time as you're trying to break down what makes Frank's work so distinct, you still have to make it something that can animate. The biggest challenge, he doesn't draw Superman the same way twice in the entire comic. From panel to panel, he's a completely different guy. They're all awesome. That's just Frank's oddball style. Which one do we choose?
It just required a lot of taking panels from the stories so that we can find what it is that is the definitive Frank Quietly isms that make up his Superman, his Lois, his Luthor. Get those locked in so that the way the little accents on the costume, the curl of the hair, or the posturing, particularly of someone like Clark, sunken shoulders drawn down, we tried to extrapolate from what we saw in the comics and then boil it down into its essential elements. That's what we tried to do as character designers.
Your boyfriend's an idiot!
How dare you? And he's not my idiot.
Why, thanks, Lois. I don't know where my self-esteem would be without you.
You've gone native.
It's disgusting.
Working with Chris Drake was great. The Superman score is one of my favorites. He did such an amazing job.
Chris, I'd worked with him on several movies already when we did this movie, and they'd all been on the darker scale, mostly Batman in the Batman corner of the universe. The challenge when doing a Superman movie is to both embrace what makes Superman Superman, but then you also don't want to just repeat what's been done in the past.
It is kind of overwhelming dealing with these legendary characters because I care so much about them, and the high bar, not only the legacy of the characters, but the legacy of the music that's come through almost 80 years now. Superman is about hope, empathy, equanimity. I felt like, well, this is different for me.
Welcome to the new world.
When I met with Bruce Timm and Sam Liu, we talked about the style and the direction, and they were both like, it's about love and empathy and self-sacrifice. And I really had to, for the first time in one of these movies, kind of be vulnerable to myself. There's a scene with Clark and Ma Kent at Jonathan's grave. I had never written a piece of music like that. I remember being stumped, and then I just started, I'm gonna think about my grandfather. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, the clock's ticking, we're under pressure, and that just came out. And to my credit, Bruce Timm teared up on the stage when he heard that, and that to this day is like a professional high point for me.
So, you have time to eat, or do you have to go save the world?
I love you, Ma.
Chris went off and just did his own thing, and then just turned into this big, perfect, epic score. By the end of it, when Superman's all suited up and going out with the Sun Eater, it's like that's like magic.
There's a scene at the end, when Superman is leaving the planet and the theme is just starting to go. Chris's score just basically took that over the top for me. Like, I still am emotional when I watch that. A lot of people think All-Star Superman to be the quintessential Superman story. It's huge in scope, right? But it's a story about him as a character. It's about him resolving things for people. It's about sacrifice. It's a very quiet piece, actually.
The story is also a great testament and celebration of the character, and is about empathy and hope and humanity.
Forgiveness.
I think we need more All-Star Superman in the world.
It's hard to describe the Silver Age Superman to somebody who has no experience of it without making it just sound really dumb.
Can be considered through a modern lens as being campy or written for children, which, technically it was.
The strangeness of the Silver Age comics, I just found it interesting that Grant Morrison embraced that and seemed very unapologetic about it.
Grant Morrison does this beautiful thing. He figures out through his genius a way to embrace the entire history of Superman, going back to the golden age of comic books, the pulp nature of it, it's all valid.
Well, the biggest person responsible for what we all consider to be the Silver Age of Superman is Mort Weisinger, who was the editor of the book. He was someone who a lot of people have said could be quite a taskmaster with his artists and writers, but during his tenure as the editor of the book, it was one of the biggest selling comic periodicals ever. It was the heyday of Superman, where millions of kids a month were reading that book.
That was literally the craziest era of Superman comics. Some of the stuff that Grant did in his comic were taken literally out of Weisinger era Superman comics from 1959 through 63. And he didn't even change them, he just put them in the comic straight up.
So you have some really fantastic ideas. You have cities and bottles and talking gorillas, or Beppo. It gets really out there.
Weisinger's Silver Age Superman explored Superman's backstory more than it focused on creating new adversaries every month. It was the series and the time period that looked back at Krypton, introduced a legion of superheroes, time travel, the Phantom Zone, Jor-El's brother, which led to Supergirl. It was all about creating this rich tapestry of Superman's history.
You know, there's one story where Superman has new superpowers every issue. The craziest superpowers you can imagine. Like there's one issue where he's like literally shooting miniature Supermans out of his fingers. You know, it's just like, what? But it's cool and it's crazy. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that would never fly nowadays. Everything has to be more rationalized and real world. So I would hesitate to even try to explain the Silver Age to anybody who's under the age of like 30.
And that's all the material that Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly harvested and utilized when they created All-Star Superman. All that lore that was created during that time. I think that they're wonderful story devices. They open up all kinds of possibilities for fantastic stories.
I do think that Grant Morrison is a fan of it. I don't know if champions is the right word, but he's unapologetic about it.
What's genius about what Morrison did was honor all these elements and be like, no, man, this is legitimate, and let's love this, and somehow mold it into a story that has fun with the Silver Age 1950s wackiness, and also not be ashamed of it, embracing it, and really letting your freak flag fly with that stuff and be like, no, this is fun. This is why we love this stuff.
What I really appreciate with what they accomplished was not shying away from any of that material, but making it all totally relevant, totally emotional. They knew how to mine all that material for the best story they could come up with.
Metropolis, Kroll will eat your children.
It is one of the greatest Superman stories ever, and not shying away from any of that lore is why it's so widely regarded and held in such high esteem by so many people.
Dwayne McDuffie completely understood everything that Grant was trying to do in the comic. All of the weird early Silver Age, wacky superhero stuff from the Weisinger era. He didn't turn his nose up at it, and when we talked about it initially, we talked about that tone.
Always a joy to see you again.
How literal are we going to be to the comic? And he said, oh, we should be as literal as possible. Like, there's nothing in there that I don't want to do.
Only your loveliness could tempt me back to this backwards century.
All the stuff that over the years, serious comic book creators said, oh, no, we can't do that anymore. That's bizarre and whatever. We have to take it all seriously. And Grant said, well, you know what? You can do both. You can still have the crazy stuff and still do a story that will resonate with the modern audience. And Grant's kind of made a career out of that, you know, embracing the weird and the bizarre, but still somehow putting his own postmodern spin on it so that it still feels fresh and not silly. So fortunately for us, we had Dwayne McDuffie writing the adaptation. That's exactly his kind of sensibility, to embrace the weirdness of comics, but then also treat it seriously enough so that it'll resonate on an emotional level.
You know what? This is why we love this stuff, and this is why it's going to break our heart at the end.
Looking for this?
It's really light and fun, you know, in the first half, and it's like Superman's dying. It's a story about cancer. It's an incredible balance, and again, that goes to Morrison's genius.
It is a phenomenal score. It hit all the notes that you could have wanted it to hit, evoking the period that we were trying to honor, which was the 50s and 60s era of Superman.
I got to be kind of a character actor musically because there's some silly stuff. There's some really heartbreaking stuff. It really runs the gamut of emotion. That's the other secret that Morrison did with this. Treating this fantastic material with sincerity and authenticity. If I can meet the music with that same level, you know, the whole thing where Lois is like, he brought me here to impregnate me and to create a race of superwomen. It's like, I scored that like Vertigo or Hitchcock. It's like she's freaking out. There's horror elements. I scored Samson and Atlas like a biblical Clash of the Titans, Hollywood sword and sandals thing.
I'll make the Titans kneel before you and give testimony to your loveliness.
There's classic B-monster movie music when you see the lizard people. So I looked at what he did with the history of Superman. I looked at the history of film music and what those stories were pulling from. Treating it all with sincerity and honoring the silliness of it.
It's almost just like, here, just watch it. just sit down and watch it and try not to be too judgy, because this is going to be unlike any Superman you've ever seen before.
I think what makes this story so unique and one of the most beloved Superman stories, it really is a celebration of the character and what he stands for.
My favorite elements are his selflessness, that he believes in truth and justice. I still admire a fictional character that can be the ideal person we all want them to be, and Superman always has been that for me, so that's what I appreciated from those Silver Age stories.